Hello, everyone, and welcome to what will be an insightful and instructive discussion on how well-crafted alternative text, better known as alt text, and intuitive SEO can make your visual content more discoverable, inclusive, and profitable. In today's DMLA webinar, Image Accessibility and SEO, celebrating Global Accessibility Awareness Day. I'm Mark Milstein, the panel moderator, DMLA's technology chairman, and director at Microstock Solutions, LLC. Before I get going here, I want to thank our sponsors, Capture, Picture Rights, CDAS, SmartFrame, Image Rights, and of course, Google. Our next webinar is tentatively scheduled for June the 18th. It'll be on NFTs. That should be absolutely out of this world and very, very topical. Video recordings from our Trends in Drones webinar, that was our last webinar, will be released shortly on our YouTube channel. Just a reminder to everybody that today's webinar will be recorded and made available to DMLA members on the next few days on our YouTube channel. They'll be made public 1 month after posting for members only. Please, if you would, remain muted during the presentations and use chat to ask questions. You can use the electronic hand to make us aware that you want to ask something. Our panel today will feature a who's who of all text, metadata, SEO all-stars, each of whom will inject this panel with their own special brand of insights and experiences in supporting the visually impaired community with assistive solutions that reduce the barriers to accessing and enjoying visual content. First up today, Carolyn DeRosier, founder and CEO of Scribely, a fast-growing startup pioneering handcrafted, highly descriptive alt text to make visual media more accessible. Scribely creates alt text exclusively for people who use text-to-speech technology, helping them access a richer internet experience and helping businesses fulfill their diversity and inclusion promises. Next up will be Natalie Trevan, an entertainer, podcaster, and diversity inclusion consultant. A screen reader user, Natalie helps businesses in the fashion and entertainment industries understand the value and importance of adding alt text to their social media and websites. She is also the creator and co-host of the Fashionably Tardy podcast. And spoiler alert, Natalie is currently starring in a national TV advertisement for Spectrum. And last but not least, David Reeks, founder of ControlVocabulary.com, which helps others build keyword hierarchies for describing images and increasing findability in digital asset management systems. David was also one of the volunteers who revised, I should say, the IPTC standard for use with Adobe's new XMP format, authored the first user guide to the IPTC core, and recently was named co-lead of the IPTC Photo Metadata Working Group. I'd like to once again remind everyone to please remain muted during the presentation, but to be prepared to unmute and turn on your camera during Q&A. And without further delay, I'd like to turn this over to Carolyn. Please.
All right. Hi, everyone. So I'm Carolyn, founder and CEO of Scribely, and I'm really excited to be on this panel today talking about how we can make digital media accessible, especially after such an important day yesterday, like Global Accessibility Awareness Day. It's just a day that gets us all thinking every year about how we can make the web a better place for everyone. So this is day one. All right, so Scribely is an accessibility solutions company on a mission to make the web inclusive for all humans. And we help digital media providers make their content accessible to people with disabilities, especially those who are blind or low vision, deaf, or hard of hearing. And I started Scribely because I was frustrated by the inaccessibility of digital images on the web. I was finding myself asking, how can we let this happen if we already have a solution in place for this problem, which is called alternative text or alt text. But unfortunately, alt text is often missing, inaccurate, or incomplete on the web. So what alt text is, it's basically a description explaining what an image looks like. And it can be a total game changer for people who use screen readers or text-to-speech technology. So at Scribely, we have a team of specialized writers who help digital media providers make their images and videos accessible. And we work primarily with editorial and content marketing teams at the pre-publication or pre-production stage. But we can also help fix accessibility errors after the fact for live content. So alt text is really everywhere images are found on the web. Think websites, social media, digital apps. A good rule of thumb is if the image is relevant to the people browsing the web, it needs alt text. But how exactly do we write it? I could go on and on about this topic, to be honest, but I'll break it down into 5 basic steps that we follow at Scribely. So first up, we have identify the primary focus or subject of the image. And that's where alt text should really begin oftentimes. So the most important information is up front. Next, we analyze the meaning, function of that image. Alt text will vary based on these things, and I'll cover that in a bit. Next, we describe any relevant or key details based on the context. So this is where that search engine optimization or SEO comes in. And by naturally incorporating these keywords into the alt text without keyword stuffing, we can also help search engines match queries to image results. Next, we need to make sure to keep it short and edit your work, because we don't want to go on and make it difficult to navigate the web through these images, but we also don't want to leave out critical details like text on the image. And finally, I would just suggest reading your description back and putting yourself in the listener's shoes. If you were describing this image to a friend, for instance, who cannot see it, would they get what this image is all about? So let's apply these rules to our first example photo, which comes with the following descriptive caption at download. Full-length portrait of astronaut Jessica Meir. Now, this descriptive caption that's provided along with the photo is a bit different than alt text, because with alt text, we focus more on describing the visual details. This is certainly a portrait of Jessica, but it also shows her personality. So here's Scribely's alt text description. A portrait of astronaut Jessica Meir posing in a NASA flight suit. Her hands are on her hips and one leg is crossed over the other, bent at the knee. Her mouth is turned up slightly, making kind of a friendly smirk. So the subject of this photo is Jessica, of course, and we find that at the beginning of the alt text description. And then we've gone on to describe relevant details like the fact that she's wearing a NASA flight suit, her hands are on her hips, and her facial expression. We don't have any context for this image because it was selected from a database. So I really just made a judgment call based on what I think makes this particular portrait photo unique. So beyond this, think about all the different types of images that we might find on the web. There are graphs, maps, diagrams, infographics, screenshots, buttons, icons. They're really all over the place. So it's important to think about, all those different types of images. There are also different genres or subjects for images. The one we just experienced here it's an example of a portrait shot of a person. But what about an action shot that's all about the sport? How does the alt text change? So let's get an example up here on screen of a sports image. So this is an action shot of Serena Williams on the tennis court before she's about to make a serve. And the same alt text rules apply here. We need to select a focus for the image and also keep in mind that it needs to be short. The difference really comes in with how you're describing the relevant details based on the context. And again, this was found in a database. So for this exercise, we're just going to have to use our imagination for context. If this image was used to show how to begin a serve, we might describe her body positioning or technique. If the photo is used to highlight maybe a moment from the game, her actual facial expression or describing the moment this image was taken may be relevant. In this case, I decided to focus on describing the details of her body positioning. So here's the descriptive caption that was provided for this photo within the database. first round doubles action shot from the women's draw at the 2013 US Open. Now, this describes a lot of helpful details about when this shot was taken, but it doesn't actually tell you what's happening in the photo. So here's the alt text that we would write for this one. Serena Williams prepares for a tennis serve. Her stance is hip distance. She leans forward on the leg closest to the net, knee bent, torso twisting slightly towards the net. She holds the racket in front at hip level, left hand touching the tennis ball to her racket in her right hand, just below its strings. Now that alt text description is a little bit longer, but because the context was to actually explain what beginning a tennis serve looks like, we needed to get into a little bit more detail to properly explain her body positioning. So now let's take a look at one more image type that I'm going to call abstract or artistic. Now this is an infrared photo, which is quite unique and adds kind of to the abstract or surreal effect that we're seeing on the screen here. In this case, it's important to describe some of the techniques that alter this photo when it's in infrared. The descriptive caption provided in the database is a view in infrared of Montreal taken with a filter made of a floppy disk. So for the alt text, we might get into describing a little bit more about how the infrared technique actually looks. So here's our alt text. Landscape infrared of the Montreal skyline. The buildings and sky appear as monochromatic shades of hazy brown. The trees and foliage appear in a stark whitish blue color, almost like they are frozen. So abstract or artistic images may sometimes get into the territory of interpretive, but we try to stick to what we can actually see in the photo as a rule of thumb. And the color contrast effect here is important to describe. The trees, of course, aren't actually frozen, but they look that way. And it may help some people quickly visualize this abstract photo, but also we've included the color contrast, the hazy brown versus white-blue color. So now let's talk about how to make videos accessible. How exactly do we do that? We're going to watch a short video that does not have sound, and then we'll talk about how to describe what's happening. So I'll play the video now. So because this is a short video, it would be helpful to provide a video description for this. And basically, that's a summary of what's happening in that video. And we're seeing these descriptions a lot on social media as individuals and businesses are working to create more inclusive experiences for their fans and followers. They're actually including these video descriptions in their captions. And the description provided by the content creator for this video is aerial footage inside the Grand Central Station in time lapse. And I think that it might be helpful with a video description to provide a little bit more detail. So we would go with daytime aerial footage of the main concourse of Grand Central Terminal. The time lapse shows bustling crowds of people moving across the floor, meeting in small and large groups, checking time schedules, stopping to take photos, and gazing at their surroundings. So we're getting into a little bit more of what we're actually seeing in this time-lapse video. Okay. So we've talked about video descriptions already, which is, again, a brief synopsis of video content that's useful in both social media and also in video metadata, as we'll get into, as David will describe later. We can also make this video accessible using audio description, which captures a video's visual moments and plays during natural audio pauses or quiet moments in the video. And in this case, there is no audio. So we could just play voiceover that describes the video, that runs the full length of the video, which is kind of cool. And audio description is helpful for people who are blind or have low vision, who want to watch and experience videos with everyone else. And it can also be fun. Maybe Natalie can speak a little bit more about this next. She's made a recent discovery on TikTok that seems to be setting a trend. All right. So if this video did have audio, we would need closed captioning, and what that is it's basically visible text of spoken dialogue and relevant sounds. And closed captions are intended for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, but they are also helpful to so many people for a variety of reasons. And finally, we have video transcripts. This is a transcript contains all of the dialogue, any of the relevant audio, and the described visual content in the video. So all in one place. And in this case, this video is very short and without dialogue or audio. So the transcript would likely look quite similar to the video description that we heard. So are these accessibility features for images and videos required? The answer is absolutely. These are fundamental components of the W3C's Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG. And accessibility is also a civil rights issue, and that means that it's protected by international anti-discrimination laws. So how does all of this apply to digital media creators and aggregators? First, we need content creators to establish workflows for born accessible content at the planning and development stages. And not only does this ensure that accurate descriptive content will be available from the beginning, it's also far easier and less expensive than having to go back and fix these missing descriptions later on. Next, image and video metadata can be used to create these rich contextual descriptions that really add value to your digital assets. And as I mentioned before, adding visual descriptions provides more information about what that photo actually is, thereby improving SEO and digital media indexing with search algorithms. It's also a great thing to pass along with your media assets to anyone who licenses your images and videos. This saves them that step of having to create it on their own, and it also improves accessibility wherever your content is heading next. And then we need to be following metadata standards and guidelines, and that's really to catalog the massive number of digital images on the web. And David is going to get into this more, but I'll just say this will not only improve search and discovery for users, it will also improve search and discovery within your own digital archives so that you can actually find these images. So right about now, you might be wondering, is there an easier way to do this? And can AI help? And unfortunately, we're just not there yet. AI computer vision for images just completely misses the mark on accuracy, detail, and creativity. Although some progress has been made with identifying objects in photos, we're still a pretty long way from being able to use computer vision for accessibility purposes. And going back to that Serena photo from earlier, the AI description, just so you can get a sense of it, is a person playing tennis. Now, this is, of course, not very descriptive or inclusive, and both the caption and also the alt text that we provided provide more details. And then for that infrared photo that we described earlier, I thought this one was interesting. AI thinks it's a city with snow on the ground. And I thought that was interesting because we kind of landed at the same place with, the frozen trees. But the AI thinks it's actual snow, missing the whole point of the effect of the photo. And then when it comes to closed captions, the AI we're using right now is called automated speech recognition, or ASR. And ASR can kind of get us started with captions, but we still need humans to fix the errors that exist with ASR and also do quality checks at the end. And that's because it's often found misspelling proper names or technical terminology, and it often neglects to apply the proper punctuation and grammar, which can make sentences really confusing for people. And you don't want to join this club of subtitle fails that are all over the internet. So please do not take your eyes off of this. These are hilarious, but I bet you don't want people to focus on that instead of your video. So just as a final message, I'd like to say, If you take the time to prioritize your accessibility features, you will take your content to the next level and really make a difference in so many people's lives. Today, it feels like we're moving so fast, especially in 2021, catching up after 2020. But some things are just worth kind of taking a breath and slowing down to do properly, especially creating quality content and making your website a great experience for everyone. So that's it for me. And I'm excited to hear from Natalie next.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Natalie, you're up.
Can you hear and see me?
Yes.
Perfect. So my name is Natalie Trevon, and I am a fashion and entertainment accessibility consultant. And like he also mentioned, I am a podcast host for Fashionably Tardy, which is kind of how I jumped into the accessibility realm. I noticed that, well, one thing we like to do on our podcast is we say that we bridge the gap between the disability community and the fashion industry by telling stories. And I really started to think about, okay, well, what is the gap? Like, what are we missing? Why is there such a disconnect between fashion and the disability community? And it really was lack of access. And that's when I really started to look at my own shopping experience, how I navigate websites, how I navigate images, what are the things that I'm having problems with, the challenges, and talking to other blind people in the community. And I noticed that it all comes down to lack of accessibility. And a big part of what we also do is I do a lot of styling. And so I noticed, like, just recently, me and Carolyn actually worked on the same project, her in a different aspect doing audio description, but I was styling another influencer, and I was going on all these websites, looking at people's brands and trying to find the right products, clothes, shoes, accessories for this client, and nothing was labeled. So there were no image descriptions. The buttons and links and other placeholders on the websites weren't labeled. And how that sounds for someone using a screen reader is just either a bunch of numbers. So if it's an image, it'll say image 13Z567, something that doesn't make sense. Or it'll say this image has no alternative text. Or if it's like buttons and links on a website, that's literally what it says, unlabeled button or link. And imagine trying to navigate something and not being able to tell what it is or what the purpose of that product is. And so I had a really tough time finding clothes for this individual because I didn't know what anything was. And so I was basically having to go by the product descriptions and say, okay, this sounds cute, I guess. Okay, this sounds cute. Not really knowing like exactly what the products were. And then I had to sit down with a friend and say, okay, these are all my choices. Can you break these images down detail by detail so that we can dress this girl appropriately? And that just sucks, our community wants to shop, our community wants to be included, and it messes with people's market and bottom line when they leave out a whole group of people that are interested in consuming content and consuming products. And the disability community is a billion-dollar community. And so we have a lot of spending power. And so you really, really, really should think about including those who are using screen readers when you are creating content. And I want to talk about the three main screen readers that blind people use and how they work so that people have a better understanding of what they are. So that's JAWS, NVDA, and VoiceOver, which is for Apple products. And NVDA and JAWS are usually used on PCs. And so basically how a screen reader works is that anything that you anything that you touch on the screen, whether it's like a touch screen, because my computer is touch screen as well, it will read. Or like if I press the arrow keys on my computer or any keys on my computer on the keyboard, it will read them. And so that's how we're able to navigate websites. And so if your images are not compatible with our screen reader, then they don't read. And so it's really an issue of working with your web developers and finding out if you're using the right overlays, because a lot of times what will happen is that a lot of businesses or brands will buy these overlay plugins that are supposed to be ADA compliant. And they're really not, because the web devs are not using real user testing. And what I mean by that is that they're not involving people within the disability community to go in and check to make sure that the overlays actually work. And that's a really, really big problem, because you will get sued. And let me tell you, I have gotten approached by attorneys that specifically work with blind people, who specifically look for websites that are not compliant, and they go back and give this information back to the attorneys, and you will get sued for not being ADA compliant. So it's really important that you think about alt text, your buttons, your labels, your overlays, making sure all those things are user friendly. And the best way to do that is to consult with somebody that's within the accessibility world, especially somebody with a disability, because they're going to give you the lived experience and let you know exactly what's not working on your website, so you can not run into those issues where you're having to shell out a lot of money for a simple thing that was easy to fix. And one way to start alt text, if you're like a little unsure of like how you can get started, or if you feel a little nervous about it, is on social media. And it's free. So on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, there is the opportunity, and Twitter, to add alt text to photos. You go into more options and you click the alt text option, and you just write a description of whatever your content is, your photo. Brands especially use Instagram to sell clothes, and I strongly recommend to them, like, hey, if you're thinking about being accessible, here's where to start. Like, if you're selling a red dress, don't just put red dress. And I see that a lot on Google. Like, it'll have some alt text, but it's very vague, and you don't really know, like, okay, a red dress, but okay, is it low cut? Is it short? Is it long sleeve? What's the fit? Is it fitted? Is it midi? Is it long? Is there a slit? Like, we need to have as many details as possible for whatever the messaging is in the image that you are showing. And that goes for any type of content you're doing. You don't want to, the point of a content creator is that you want a bunch of people to see what you're creating, right? You like want the biggest audience as possible. And you don't get that when you don't include alt text, because you're missing out on a whole group of people that could be consuming your content. And so that's what we really try to do at Fashionably Tardy, is try to work with different companies, brands, and organizations to think about these things that actually improve their business. They don't take away, they add to it. And it's not like a super costly, like, especially if you start with your social media, that's something you can be doing for free. And so that's kind of like my whole spiel about why alt text is important. And to speak to what Carolyn was talking about with the audio description, Gen Z gets it. Like, they're doing it already. Like, there's a trend on TikTok right now where people basically narrate their day, and they don't even know they're doing audio description. They let you know everything that they're doing that day, whether like they're I've seen one where it's like a record label. This lady works for a record label, and she like she goes through her day, and she's like describing everything that she's doing. And it's a huge trend on TikTok right now, and people don't even know that they're already doing audio description. So it's a really easy thing to apply to your life. I know it takes a few extra seconds, but it's really helpful for those in the community who do want to be part of your content. So I just want to, let everybody know that, yes, we do watch content, we do listen to content, we do want to be included, and please think about us when you are creating content. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Natalie. I just want to remind everybody that there's opportunities throughout the entire panel discussion to ask questions. And we have one from our audience. Is there a universal hashtag or keyword we should use once we make our social platform alt text accessible? Somebody want to weigh in on that?
Can you repeat the question, Mark? I'm sorry.
Sure, absolutely, Natalie. Is there a universal hashtag or keyword we should use once we make our social platforms alt text accessible?
I mean, I don't think you really have to use the hashtag per se, because it is like the alt text is embedded into the photo. So if someone's using a screen reader, they're automatically going to hear the alt text. I mean, if you want to start a cute hashtag just to like be a trendsetter and get the movement started, I don't see why not. And I would just, hashtag accessible, hashtag inclusion, hashtag representation matters, disability visibility. Those are all kind of the ones that we're using right now. So, I mean, yeah, if you want to be like the trendsetter and get like an alt text hashtag started, I say go for it.
Great. Are there any other questions? And if not, at this moment, I'd like to open the floor up to David Reeks. David, take it away.
So my name is David Ricks. Just wanted to, and so far my eyesight is still good, although I have a mother who's been suffering from macular degeneration for like the last 30 years. So I truly understand the concerns. I've tried to get her interested in audiobooks. Library of Congress has a free program. But she's been content with radio and using her reading machine. And these are like old school optical machines. And more recently, we've been getting her to bypass the original internet by using Alexa, which is another whole thing. But of course, she ends up using it to tune into her favorite conservative radio shows, but I can't do anything about that. I can no longer show her photos, but instead have to describe them to her. So I do get the need for descriptions of images. I end up describing a lot of stuff to her, so I probably could fill in writing alt text without even skipping a beat. I also understand the importance of good captions and keywords for those other people who are just trying to find digital files on a computer system, because that's kind of the whole thing I do with controlled vocabulary. And that's essentially what alt tags are. They're short captions for your images. You can use specific HTML markup to also set these as captions, but the alt tag can make it easier for the screen readers out there. What we probably need to think about, though, is some kind of return on investment for those making these efforts. So is there a carrot that we can dangle out there? Alt text has been around for, I was looking it up, it's actually been around since the last century, meaning 1995. That was, I think, in version 2 of HTML, and then they've got revisions for the newer stuff, and Carolyn had mentioned the WCAG guidelines as well. So, but for most screen readers, I would bet that at best alt text out there may be about the same as the images that you'll find with embedded photo metadata, which is a lot less than it probably should be. I think I saw in the chat, Chad was asking about the optimal length for alt text. And the one thing I kept running across was 125 characters, although I know Carolyn was talking the other day about, I think like 250 or something is considered acceptable. Do all low vision and visually impaired people know which browser to use or how to set these up? I know I was even just trying to envision it. I know, 5-10 years ago in like Firefox and things like that, you could just literally like hover your cursor over an image and you would actually see the alt text pop up. Or sometimes it was at the bottom of the screen. So even for somebody who wasn't using a quote unquote screen reader, you got an idea of whether or not that was there. It's a little harder now with Chrome. The way that they have to envision this, at least from my perspective, is not that easy. But if I did look, and there actually are a couple of videos out there on YouTube that actually do show what these screen readers look like. So I highly encourage people to go and look for those, because that might give you a better idea of what people with low vision or no vision whatsoever, how they're experiencing the internet. So, are they seeing that text above or below? Are they hearing it? Is it enlarged? There's lots of different things. in specifically when you get to talking about the actual descriptions themselves, I know Carolyn had presented at an IPTC meeting last week, and one of the other members had stated that from his perspective, most captions only contain kind of the basics and history, and Carolyn kind of demonstrated that with the picture of the quote unquote person playing tennis. But most of these news images don't seem to have much more than that. Some creative photos may have a little bit more description, but whether or not that is the norm or not, it's hard to say. So the bigger thing is how to get into this info. How could we make this work? There's a few options that may be out there. Oh, and I ran across this just the other day when I was putting together this show. There's actually an alt text already built into PowerPoint. It's been there for a long time. I wasn't even aware of it. But it is out there. So one of the things that I was thinking about that might be possible is look at mappings, because some of the accessibility things could be tied in with like schema.org, but there are 2 fields that are already in the IPTC photo metadata standard that are not, they're pretty closely aligned, and I think you could make an argument to connect the 2, and that would be the headline field, which, I mean, if you go back to the older, what they called the IPTC IIM standard, it actually cut off at 256 characters. So it's not bad for 125 characters if you're trying to get that. Oops, I'm on my wrong screen here. So we could look at something like that. Let's see, let me find my notes here. The other thing I was going to mention too is I don't know how many of the DMLA members have figured out how to get the Google image search to display what they're calling the licensable badge, but that's all about preserving embedded photo metadata in a workflow or figuring out schema.org. But if you've been doing it via having your images that are on the screen that people can access, have that preserved embedded photo metadata in it, you've probably already done a lot of the legwork that you would need to do to kind of map these things together. The big thing would be to think about what you can do now. There are, like I said, there's a headline field, and it's now called the description field. Many people who've been in the industry for years would probably call it the caption field. And there's in the accessibility things, there's something they call long description, which can be fairly long, and that one might match up fairly well with that if you do a little additional work. But I know a lot of DMLA members are basically creating content, and then they're pushing it out to other people, so they don't have complete control over the website it may be on, but they could still be starting off by populating those headline and description fields using best practices, some of the things that Carolyn had mentioned. You could also check with their distributors, whoever the website it's eventually getting put up onto, to make sure that information that they're taking the time to put with their images is actually getting there. Or I know in the beginning, in a lot of digital stuff, there was you send the images and then you send a spreadsheet. So maybe that could be part of the spreadsheet if you're still doing it that way. And it's also useful to see if the images that the customers are downloading have that information in it. My experience has been back when I was working with a group called the Stock Artists Alliance. We would occasionally do some, I think they were called, sneaky shopping or something like that, where we would literally license some images just to see what was in the images and trace back how much the person was making out of it. And there was, I would say more often than not, there was nothing in the image whatsoever. So that's something that hopefully is improved upon in the last 10 years. Looking at aggregators, since you've got a little bit more control, in addition to populating those headline and description fields, or encouraging your content creators to provide them to you. You might also want to look into see how, make sure that information gets to the customers, and also see if there's ways that you can leverage that to populate the HTML of the supporting page. That way it would show up for people that are using screen readers. And the last thing would just, make sure that that's in the files your customers download. So, and just looking a little further forward, look at what your trade association can do, because this could be something, an accessibility thing could be kind of a push that the organization does. You could even work with some of if there are, I know a lot of the websites that aggregators use are kind of bespoke systems. So they're kind of, roll your own. But there are a lot of customers that are using, off the shelf WordPress, Drupal, other kinds of content management systems or CMSs. And it should be possible for those to get connected, rewire them so that, the description that's in the image can get used for that, or the headline could get mapped so that you don't have to copy and paste it from that into the alt text field. So if there's something the association could do, if there's committees or something like that that could work on that, that might be a good positive step. The other thing would be to, sell it as a bonus to your customers, promote this alt text ready images or accessibility ready, something like that, where you're selling the fact that you have this information already made for the customers so that they don't have to sit down and do it themselves or pay somebody else to do it. So those are, I think, all things that could help. And with that, I think hopefully we'll have some questions.
Yeah, thank you very, very much, David. I'd like to, before I throw out the opportunity to the audience to ask some questions, I was thinking to myself as I listened to Carolyn and Natalie speak, I wonder whether or not there is a sort of hall of fame and a hall of shame of some of the best and some of the worst experiences that either the two of you have ever had with any, I don't know if it's necessary to name the corporations and or organizations that host these websites, but I would really be curious whether or not you've sort of have some distinctive memories of some unbelievably well thought out descriptions that you've stumbled upon, in other words, not done by yourself. And to Natalie, whether or not there are any hall of shamers out there, companies, organizations, platforms that really should know better, without naming them, but just describing, in other words, how they've fallen, how they have fallen short, and what potentially could be done to, what potentially you have done to educate them.
Sure. So I'll kick it off with, I have seen, and I don't want to name any names, but in terms of, and because it's a positive thing actually, but there's some e-commerce brands that are really focusing on their DEI efforts, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they've taken that to heart, and they've taken it all the way to their alt text. And a lot of these are, I'm seeing these in like forward thinking industries, you could say, like in fashion and entertainment, and they're including alt text, and it's taking their content to the next level. Natalie described, trying to shop for clothes online, which of course, we all need to shop online during COVID, or had to. And these descriptions are taking, what they've already provided in the product description to the next level by actually describing, the different angles of a product, how that piece of clothing looks from the front, the side, the back, exactly what you can expect. Outfit pairings as well. What kind of shoes go with the jeans? How can I complete this outfit? Kind of giving you, a sense of like, okay, yeah, now I can see how this would all come together. Actually, in my closet, I have that piece of clothing. So I would say, these industries are doing a good job And I'll leave it to Natalie to describe some of the more negative experiences that she's had with using her screen reader.
Negative experiences. I haven't come across a brand yet that is really doing a great job of accessibility all across the board. I will say that there are a lot of brands reaching out now. I feel like this is the climate to do it. I know that we recently talked to Jouer Cosmetics, and they're really interested on figuring out how they can make their products and websites more accessible. So I think that yes, they're not doing a good job right now, and there's a lot of brands. There's actually too many to name. But the good part about it is that people are starting to care, and they're starting to reach out and say, what can I do? What can be done? And I think the more awareness we raise, the more, content creators will get involved. But I can't name one right now that's just doing an amazing job other than Patty and Ricky, who Alex Harold, who's great friends with me and Carolyn. And that's because it's like her mission and passion to do that, because her website is all about adaptive fashion. And so it's actually the adaptive fashion marketplace for people with disabilities. And so she's really trying to make it accessible for everyone. And when I see her social media, she always has alt text. And so she's kind of leading that right now as far as content creators and brands, and obviously people who are blind, like Lucy Edwards, who's great about always putting alt text for her content. But if I could specifically name a company right now that's doing a good job at that, I don't know that I could. And that's kind of the problem.
Thank you to both of you. In lieu of another question, I thought I would follow up by asking you. So, look, many of the attendees here have their own agencies and/or are central to the operations, the content operations at other agencies and/or their service providers. And they're probably wondering to themselves, "Gosh, I would like a great piece of software, a mechanism where I could adapt that as quickly as possible to apply this metadata, this level of metadata, this SEO, this alt text metadata to the content, because I think it's a good thing to do and it's important, and so on and so forth." Could either of you recommend a software platform that that knocks everything out of the park, and that clicks all the boxes and would make the application of alt text fairly easy and straightforward?
By software, do you mean, some sort of automated software, or?
No. What I was thinking is that, look, every one of us who are in this business are familiar with a variety of digital asset management softwares that are the heart and soul of the collections that they manage. And so they are using some piece of software to apply their IPTC metadata at this moment. But if they now wish to add alt text in a more industrial level, meaning not just image by image, because that might be very, very difficult time-wise, but if they want to be able to apply it on an industrial scale, is there a particular piece of software at this time which would be addressed to this audience?
Yeah, that's a good question. And to be honest, most of my work has been, kind of working with, within the proprietary systems for clients, and they often have their own way of doing this. So it's a good question. And maybe David, if you have ideas, you could jump in about, content management software that could achieve this. But I'll say that there's always a place for alt text. And it just depends on kind of how your backend systems are set up. So we've worked within databases where, there is actually a field to populate for alt text that can be managed in a database format. So we can essentially add those descriptions very efficiently to a spreadsheet and or a database, and have those ingested back in and then replacing that alt text in the system. And that's a very efficient way to do it, because then you don't have to go one by one to each image, right? And then you also have a data backup in case something changes and all your alt text is wiped out. That would be devastating. So with large databases of images, we would recommend that approach of, having some sort of metadata backup for your alt text.
Right. In regards to, I got a question here from David in regards to image SEO, I'm sorry, a comment. He says that Yoast has an optimize your alt text and title text article, and he's provided a link here. Which is,
that's what I was going to say. Yeah,
sorry.
I mean, it covers. I know it had some information about WordPress, which I know a lot of people use, and there's a spot in WordPress where you can do that. The whole automating thing, that's another thing. I mean, this is a field you can copy and paste into, and that's why I was suggesting one of the things to maybe look at is trying to find a way to maybe hardwire. There are within the image library within WordPress, if you've set up WordPress correctly, it can preserve the metadata that is within them. And I know there was Janos Farkas at Clink Media, he'd been doing some work with a WordPress plugin that could leverage some of the embedded metadata. So I think it's a matter of getting the right people together that can kind of like, wire those patch cords together so that the information can flow from one to another.
What about with video, Carolyn? I'm supposing that you must occasionally get video or regularly get video from your clients. How are you applying the alt text to video?
My preferred method is Adobe video editing products. I find those pretty easy to use because you can actually layer in voiceover very easily to, creating an audio track. So that helps you along with your audio description. And then you can quickly, if you need to, if there aren't any natural audio pauses, maybe like dialogue is just running together, you can actually create an extended play version where you're creating a bit of a pause and you're able to provide more details in that case. And sometimes that's really helpful when we just don't have any space to do the voiceover. So I would recommend Adobe. That's my favorite.
I see. Anybody else have any additional questions? Because I continue to have questions. I'm sorry that I don't want to monopolize the question and answer period here. But I was wondering whether or not there's been any discussion with Adobe to provide some sort of visual cue to the sighted community that any image or asset has had alt text applied to it. I know that we are discussing this through the idea, with the idea that it is for the vision impaired and hearing impaired community. However, I certainly, as I'm scrolling through, tens of thousands of images per day, would be very, very interested to note that any one image might already have alt text included, because then I would absolutely stop and want to make sure. I'd want to take a look at it, or I want to hear it, depending on the asset type. Is there any movement and or any thinking about providing a visual cue to the sighted community that that alt text has been applied?
That's an idea. So actually calling out the images that include alt text.
Right.
I think the problem there would be that we're seeing a lot of misuse of the alt text field. Oftentimes there's just like an image file name or the word image or just a string of keywords. And that's, it could potentially, that could pass, right, as, an image that has alt text. It may pass an accessibility scan, but upon closer look, it's not a proper description. So it's just to say that, there's so much misuse of that field that I don't think we're there yet, actually.
I see. So there's an education element here.
Yeah.
We got a question from Doug DeWeer, and he asks, what do you think about tools for auditing your websites for ADA compliance? One that would also highlight images that are missing alt text. Again, a similar question to mine about, noting images that are alt text, that do carry alt text. But how about the opposite side, noting images that are not or are missing alt text?
So I can go ahead and take this one.
Thank you
So
very
it's
much.
really important that you work with your web dev, whoever it is, whether it be WordPress or Shopify, Foursquare, whatever it may be, that you're working with them and making sure they're using real user testing. So a lot of times they will have these accessibility overlay plugins that you can buy, and they'll say, yeah, you're being ADA compliant. And you're like, great, you're thinking you're doing the job, you're figuring it out. And then come to find out your website isn't actually ADA compliant. They actually don't work. And so it's really important that you're in this active communication with your web dev to make sure that it's actually working. And we have to call them out, because a lot of times with your web devs, they don't even give you instructions of how to populate alt text. So you'll go through your website and you'll see it, and people don't even know. They're like, what is this? How do you populate alt text? Because they're not walking people through how to actually be ADA compliant. So it's really important that you're having these conversations with your web dev to say, okay, I talked to a consultant, and that's another way. You can hire a consultant to go through your website and to give you the rundown of what's missing and what needs to be done. And so you take those notes to your web dev and say, okay, I talked to a real user. I got a real user consultant. These are the bugs that we found. Okay, how can we fix this? And then have them fix it, and then come back to that consultant and say, is it fixed? I think that's going to be the best way, because like I said, you don't want to spend money on a plugin that doesn't actually work, and then you find out you're not ADA compliant and end up getting sued. And so I would work closely with a consultant who's in the community. I can't stress that enough. And have that conversation with your web dev to make sure that it's actually working the way it needs to be working. And that's kind of my spill on it.
Sure, Natalie, there's a follow-up question from Doug where he asks, where do we find these qualified consultants? Local Braille institutes, could you, or similar locations, similar organizations? Could you make some suggestions?
I've got a suggestion as well after Natalie.
Yeah, I mean, Melissa and I from FT can definitely go through and give you a preliminary run through of what's missing on your website, and then refer you to places that can fix them, or you can just take those notes back to your web dev. But I also know people within the community that can do it as well. And yeah, I mean, I think the best way, me and Carolyn are actually working with another group to develop a list of consultants. It's coming, but I think that, I know a bunch of people. So if you are interested, you can go ahead and send me an email at hello@fashionablytardy.com. That's again, hello@fashionablytardy.com. And I can go ahead and refer some people to you, or, if you want to use us, you can. But yeah, there's definitely people in the community like Shannon Gardner, Brando Collins. I know a bunch of people with those certificates that could go through your website and help figure out what's actually going on with it. But I would be careful with Braille Institute and Lighthouse, just because they might just give you people that are blind, which is great, but you want to make sure that it's somebody who knows exactly what to be looking for and exactly what notes to give you so that you can take back to the web devs.
Thank you very, very much, Natalie. I see that Carolyn has also placed her contact details in the chat for everybody to take a look at. We're just coming up at the end of our webinar. And I want to say thank you once again to our esteemed panelists.
Oh,
sorry,
could I just give me 30 seconds? I was going to say, we had Jean Spellman, and I was going to throw her name into the chat, had spoken at our IPTC meeting last week. And one of the things I was going to say in terms of tools is that they are in the process of revising the WCAG guidelines. And one of the things that she had mentioned is before, a lot of the stuff was kind of like pass or fail, and they've moved now to more of a point system. So that's probably going to change. Whatever tools you're looking at are probably going to be changing in the near future as well. So just to give anybody a heads up, I wouldn't spend a ton of money on tools that are for the old guidelines, because the new ones are going to be coming in the next, she said it could be a couple of years, but within probably the next 2.
Thank you very much for that, David. And so I know that we don't have a hard stop here, but I'd like to ask if anybody else has any further questions. And if not, then once again, I'd like to thank our esteemed panelists, Carolyn DeRosier, Natalie Trevan, David Ricks, and all of our attendees for joining us today. And once again, thank our sponsors, Capture, PicRights, CDAS, SmartFrame, ImageRights, and of course, Google. And to remind everybody that our next webinar is tentatively scheduled for the 18th of June. It'll be on NFTs. Wow, as I said earlier, a very explosive subject right now. You know that some people have, or some artists and creatives have been able to monetize their products and their art for tens of millions of dollars. It was going to be an incredibly interesting look at how that's all working out for everybody and how we possibly can all be involved. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you to everybody once again, and looking forward to seeing you at that time.